Welcome back to The Midnight Mind. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you're new, and please give this video a like. It means a lot. It's midnight, and that means one thing. It's time to enter the mind of Carl Jung. You wake up one morning and your body is no longer yours. You look in the mirror and see a grotesque alien thing staring back at you. You scream, but the world doesn't hear. Or worse, it hears and recoils in disgust. This is how Kafka's Metamorphosis begins. A man, Gregor Samsa, opens his eyes and finds he has turned into an insect. But the transformation is not the horror. The horror is what follows. How his family reacts, how the world moves on, how he realizes he was already something less than human long before his body changed. Carl Jung wouldn't have been surprised by Gregor's fate. He might have even said it was inevitable. The insect, in Jungian terms, is not a random curse, it's the shadow. The shadow is the part of you that you deny, suppress, exile. It carries your rage, your lust, your despair, and your unrealized potential. Gregor didn't become a monster because of magic. He became one because his life was already a slow collapse of the soul. He ignored his truth for too long, and eventually it took over. Gregor Samsa lived for everyone else but himself. He wakes up every day, goes to a job he hates, working endlessly to pay off his family's debt. His father is idle, his mother anxious, his sister still dreaming. Gregor is the mule, the servant, the one who never says no. But beneath this surface lies resentment, exhaustion, a deep, quiet scream that no one around him hears. And when the metamorphosis comes, it doesn't make him less human. It simply reveals what he's always been: used, unseen, and unfree. This is why Kafka's story cuts so deeply. It's not about insects at all. It's about what happens when the human spirit is crushed beneath duty and obligation until nothing recognizable remains. Gregor's family never loved him for himself. They loved him for his usefulness. And when that usefulness was gone, so was their concern. They recoiled not from his bug-like shell, but from the unbearable truth it symbolized: that he had never lived his own life, only theirs. In Jungian psychology, the shadow grows stronger the longer it's denied. It festers in silence until the pressure can no longer be contained. Then it bursts out, often in catastrophic ways. Addictions, breakdowns, sudden rages, or in Gregor's case, a surreal transformation. What Kafka captured in fiction is something many people live every day without naming it: the slow corrosion of the self, when you're trapped in roles that were never yours. You don't need an insect's body to feel the weight of alienation. The tragedy of Gregor Samsa is not that he became an insect, but that he already was one long before. His job reduced him to a cog in the machine, a faceless provider. His family treated him not as a son or brother, but as a source of income. His entire identity was built on sacrifice and obedience. In Jungian terms, he had surrendered to the persona, a mask crafted for social survival. Behind that mask, his real self withered away. The metamorphosis merely ripped the mask off, exposing what had been rotting underneath all along. If you've ever felt like a stranger in your own life, alien in your own skin, unseen by those closest to you, you have lived a version of Gregor's story. You may not have turned into an insect, but you have worn masks that never fit, and have played roles that drained you. You've silenced parts of yourself just to survive. This is the tragedy of modern identity. We confuse duty with purpose, performance with being, and in doing so, we bury the very parts of ourselves that could set us free. Consider the subtle ways you may already be experiencing your own metamorphosis. Perhaps it shows up as constant exhaustion, as though every task takes twice the energy it should. Perhaps it's in the quiet bitterness you feel towards those who lean on you without acknowledgement. Perhaps it's in the nagging thought at night that whispers, "This isn't the life you wanted." These are not minor inconveniences. They are signals from the shadow. They are the cracks forming in the surface of your carefully maintained identity. The shadow never goes away by being ignored. Jung said that what we repress doesn't disappear. It waits. It gathers power. And one day it bursts through the fragile surface of our carefully constructed life. Gregor's metamorphosis was not punishment, it was revelation. It was the soul breaking through the prison of appearances, screaming out in the only language left, monstrosity. His new form was not a curse, but an accusation. It said, "You have betrayed yourself, and this is the cost." In your own life, the shadow may not appear with claws and antennae. It may show itself as depression, rage, burnout, or an unshakable sense of emptiness. It may emerge in the sudden collapse of a career, the implosion of a relationship, or a quiet voice whispering, "This isn't who you are." We call these crises, breakdowns, failures, but in truth, they are metamorphoses. The soul demanding to be seen, even if it must appear as an insect to get your attention. Gregor's tragedy is that he could not face his revelation. He curled deeper into shame, into silence, into isolation. But you don't have to. Jung teaches that transformation begins not with light, but with darkness. You must face what you've hidden, the anger you swallow, the dreams you abandon, the truth you fear. To live as Gregor did, denying your own reality until it devours you, is to slowly erase yourself. But to turn toward the shadow, to let it speak, is to begin the process of becoming whole again. So I ask you, what part of yourself have you exiled? What truth have you buried so deep that it claws at the edges of your life? And more importantly, what will happen if you never let it speak? Because the shadow always demands its due, and if you don't face it willingly, it will force you to face it, in forms more grotesque than you can imagine. This is the lesson of Gregor Samsa. This is the lesson of every life that is lived in silence, until the silence itself becomes unbearable. Gregor's family is horrified not by who he is, but how he appears. The insect body becomes their obsession. His father attacks him. His mother faints. His sister, who once seemed closest to him, recoils with fear and disgust. They no longer see Gregor. They see only the monstrous surface, and in that moment, they decide he is no longer one of them. This is the cruelest revelation in Kafka's tale. Not that Gregor has changed, but that love collapses when appearances are disrupted. Jung saw this clearly. Society rejects what it cannot face. The insect is not Gregor's real crime. His crime is becoming a mirror. He shows his family the truth of their dependence, their selfishness, their fear of the unfamiliar. And because they cannot bear that reflection, they turn on him. This is the fate of the shadow made visible. It's cast out, demonized, treated as a disease. Gregor becomes the scapegoat for everything his family doesn't want to confront. He's punished, not for changing, but for showing them who they really are. The insect body is a symbol, a grotesque but honest revelation of what Gregor's life already was. His humanity had long been stripped away by servitude, by endless labour, by a loveless home that consumed his efforts while giving him nothing in return. When his body changes, it only exposes the truth. Gregor was already dehumanized. His shell is the outward sign of an inward reality. This is why the story unsettles us so deeply. It whispers that beneath our polished masks, many of us are already crawling in shells we didn't choose. Nietzsche warned that transformation demands suffering. To shed false skins, one must endure rejection, loneliness, even hatred. He wrote that one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. That chaos is what society fears. It fears those who refuse the script, those who let the shadow speak, those who allow their mask to fall away. Gregor's transformation is not heroic because he cannot embrace it. But for us, the lesson remains. If you dare to transform, expect resistance, expect rejection. Appearances rule the world, and the world will fight to keep them intact. Think of how this applies in modern life. People curate their identities on social media, constructing digital masks polished to perfection. Entire careers are built on image management, where appearance matters more than authenticity. We dress our words, our photos, our lives in costumes designed to keep others comfortable. And when someone breaks that illusion by showing vulnerability, by expressing anger, by defying expectations, the response is often swift rejection. The insect body may look different, but the principle is the same. The world recoils from what it cannot categorize. This is the prison of appearances. You're not judged for who you are, but for the mask you wear. And if that mask slips, if your true self leaks out in a way that disrupts the narrative others rely on, you risk being cast out. Gregor's fate is a warning. Appearances are fragile, and once broken, they reveal how conditional love and acceptance often are. His family didn't reject him because he had changed. They rejected him because he no longer upheld the illusion that kept their world intact. But here's the paradox. Freedom lies only in seeing through appearances. To cling to masks is to live as Gregor once did, trapped in roles, suffocating beneath obligations that erase the soul. The price of authenticity is rejection, but the price of falsehood is annihilation. Jung would say that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires that you embrace the part of yourself that others cannot accept. Nietzsche would add that this path demands courage, because suffering is inevitable. And yet, through that suffering, something stronger is born. So the question becomes, which prison are you living in? The prison of appearances that wins you conditional approval, or the solitude of authenticity that may strip it away? Gregor was thrust into the latter without choice, and he perished under the weight of it. But you still have a choice. You can begin to peel back the masks voluntarily, to confront the truths others may despise, but which your soul desperately needs to express. Only then can you step outside the fragile cage of appearances into a freedom that is not given, but claimed. To expand further, consider how fragile appearances truly are. One wrong word, one failed performance, one refusal to play the expected role, and suddenly the approval you relied on vanishes. How many friendships, careers, or reputations have collapsed because someone broke character, revealing a truth that others couldn't tolerate? We pretend society values honesty, but often it only tolerates honesty that doesn't disrupt the illusion. Gregor's insect body was disruptive truth incarnate, and his punishment was exile. The same logic plays out today in quieter but equally devastating ways. Appearances are seductive because they offer safety. When you conform, when you wear the right mask, you avoid conflict. You're rewarded with belonging, with approval, with conditional love. But this safety is temporary, because it's not you who is loved, it is your mask. And when the mask cracks, when you can no longer maintain it, the withdrawal of love feels like death. Gregor's fate illustrates this with brutal clarity. His family never loved him. They loved what he provided. The moment that mask fell away, their affection vanished with it. Jung would remind us that the shadow despises masks. It tears at them from the inside, demanding authenticity. The longer you cling to appearances, the more violent the shadow's eventual eruption will be. Nietzsche would add that this eruption is necessary, because only through the destruction of illusions can something real emerge. The collapse of appearances is painful, but it is also liberating. It forces you to confront the truth, that your worth cannot rest on what others see, but on what you embody when no mask remains. The lesson of Gregor's insect body is not despair, but clarity. It reveals how conditional love can be, how fragile appearances always are, and how false belonging destroys the soul. To free yourself from this prison, you must accept the risk of rejection. You must be willing to lose approval to gain authenticity. Gregor never embraced this truth, and so his metamorphosis ended in death. But for you, it can be the beginning of life, the moment when appearances fall and the real self finally begins to breathe. Gregor's story ends with rejection and death. His family shuts him away, hides him from visitors, and eventually wishes him gone. When he finally dies, they feel relief. They speak of a fresh start, of new possibilities without him. To them, Gregor was not a son, a brother, a human being. He was a burden. Yet the point of Metamorphosis is not Gregor's death. The story is not about his end, but about what his metamorphosis reveals. the hidden truth of alienation, the cost of denial, and the possibility of transformation for those who dare to face it. Carl Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires us to confront alienation. You cannot integrate your shadow without first accepting the pain of being misunderstood, rejected, and even despised. Gregor could not endure this trial, and so he withered away. But for us, his fate is a warning, not a sentence. To step onto the path of individuation is to embrace the same exile Gregor endured, but with a crucial difference: the willingness to learn from it. Alienation, if faced consciously, can become the forge of transformation rather than the tomb of despair. Jung often described the shadow as the dark brother within us, the part that carries both our flaws and our potential. To face it is terrifying because it reveals truths that contradict the image we present to the world. Yet, it is only through this confrontation that we find authenticity. Gregor's metamorphosis was a failed individuation. His shadow consumed him because he couldn't integrate it. But the lesson remains clear. Transformation begins with facing the parts of yourself you least want to see, and embracing them as necessary parts of your soul's wholeness. Nietzsche would push this further. He argued that true transformation is painful, that suffering is not an obstacle but the very path to strength. What does not kill me makes me stronger, he wrote. Not as a cliché, but as a challenge. Gregor's suffering destroyed him because it was endured passively, without purpose. He submitted to his family, to his role, to his insect body. He never turned suffering into strength, but you can. Nietzsche's insight is that transformation requires not just enduring suffering, but affirming it, saying yes to it, and using it as raw material for growth. In this light, Gregor's story becomes a mirror of your own choices. You may already feel the stirrings of metamorphosis in your life, moments of crisis, feelings of alienation, the collapse of identities that once seemed stable. The question is not whether these changes will come, they always do. The question is whether you will meet them as Gregor did, with silence and resignation, or whether you will face them consciously, integrating what they reveal and using it to reshape your life. The shadow doesn't disappear, but when embraced, it becomes a source of vitality, creativity, and authenticity. Modern life makes this especially urgent. Many people live like Gregor, trapped in jobs that numb them, relationships that suffocate them, roles that erase their individuality. They keep the mask on, terrified of what will happen if it slips. But the cost is slow spiritual death. Transformation demands the courage to risk rejection, to endure misunderstanding, to walk away from the cages built by appearances. It means saying no when everyone expects you to say yes. It means listening to the small, insistent voice inside you that says, "This is not who you are." To confront your insect self is to confront the truths you've ignored. It may be the anger you've swallowed for years. It may be the dream you abandoned because it frightened others. It may be the silence you've maintained to avoid conflict, even as it ate away at your soul. These are your wings and claws, the features you have hidden, but which mark you as real. To integrate them isn't to indulge them recklessly, but to give them space in your life, to acknowledge their existence and learn from their message. Only then can you rebuild an identity that is not false, but whole. Think of individuation as a second metamorphosis, the one Gregor never achieved. The first transformation, like his, may feel monstrous. It may strip you of recognition, status, belonging. But if you endure it with awareness, if you integrate what emerges from the shadow, you can step into a new form, not as an insect, but as an authentic human being. This path is not safe. It's not easy. But it is the only path that leads to freedom. The alternative is to remain trapped, wearing masks until they suffocate you, just as Gregor suffocated in his room. So, what is the final lesson of Kafka's story seen through Jung and Nietzsche? It's that freedom doesn't come from avoiding transformation. It comes from embracing it. Sometimes you must become the monster before you can become yourself. The shadow must be faced. The mask must be torn away. The prison of appearances must be shattered. Gregor's fate is tragic, but it's also a gift to us. He shows us what happens if we refuse the call. And in that refusal, he forces us to ask, will we choose differently? The herd will always obey. Authority will always command. Families and societies will always cling to appearances. But you have a choice. You can begin the journey of individuation. You can face your shadow and integrate its power. You can say no to the roles that devour you, and yes to the path that transforms you. The cost will be rejection. The cost will be suffering. But the reward is freedom. And freedom, as Kafka and Jung both remind us, is never given. It is taken in the dark when you finally dare to face yourself. Well, that's it for today's episode. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And if you would like to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. And I'll see you guys next time.